Well, I still think it's a growth industry where things have changed a little bit. More people working at home, but there's still that need to meet in person. Uh, People still will ride the trains. We still need that transportation for energy efficiency. People will use it for cultural events. Of course, the freight industry we continues to grow, and it changes, of course. But I still see a lot of promise in the industry. I do see other things coming along, such as the Hyperloop. But there will always be a need to move people and goods.
You may know the American Railway Engineering and Maintenance of Way Association, or AREMA, as the, quote, keepers of the manuals. You may know them as the, quote, people behind the largest annual railroad conference in North America. Heck, you may not know about AREMA at all. This podcast is designed, no pun intended, to change your view of who AREMA is and how AREMA has changed the trajectory of many railway careers over its 100-plus year history. Welcome to Platform Chats with your host, Walt Blesser, where he takes a moment to discuss the impacts AREMA has had on the very people who are proud to be called members. Are you ready to roll with AREMA?
This episode is brought to you by Unabridged Structures. Unabridged Structures provides mentorship and advisement to emerging technologies and early-stage companies focused on infrastructure. They have a proven track record of bringing technology solutions to the railway industry. For more on Unabridged Structures, go to unabridgedstructures.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the next episode, episode 7, to be exact, of AREMA's Platform Chats. I'm your host, Walt Blesser. I appreciate any and all of you that have made it from episode 1 all the way to episode 7. That means you keep tuning in because my guests are keeping you going. It's most likely not because of the sound of my voice. As we learned in the last podcast, I was outdone by one of my guests. Tell you what, I know last time we made a big announcement about how we were the top 25 railway industry podcasts. I got a lot of feedback on that one. The message hotline lit up with people just shocked that there were 24 other podcasts. We are currently ranked 13. I did get online this morning to see if we had moved up because iTunes almost shut down with the number of downloads of episode 6. There were a lot of excited people that wanted to hear about Committee 35. I could see, I assured Apple that we were going to continue with these podcasts in a manner that did not hurt their infrastructure. They were very supportive of how successful this podcast has been thus far. However, we are still 13. So either those ranks aren't moving fast enough, or I need to send a quick note to whoever's doing the ranking. Well, enough about that. Let's get to it. I had a little bit of a quick disappearing act again. I had a child here a couple of weeks ago and needed to take a little break, but I have reemerged, and I am reemerging with none other than the current AREMA President, Vic Babin. His full name is Victor. We call him Vic. He has been the president of AREMA. If you're not familiar, and Vic will probably get to this here in a minute, he can explain how one becomes the president of AREMA, what the term is, how do you ascend to that? I think a lot of people would be interested to know the backstory outside of the Scotch, smoke, and mirrors that are most likely involved. He can maybe debunk that. Vic, welcome to the podcast. If you could just do a quick, that doesn't even need to be quick. It's just you and me today. So why don't you give us a background of where you grew up and how you got in the industry, and let's finish off with how you became the AREMA president.
All right. Thanks, Walter. Great to be here, and congratulations on the new baby. I understand this is number 2 for you.
Yes, sir.
That's wonderful. That's the blessings of life. So, I went to college part-time. I went to Purdue, a local campus here in Hammond, Indiana. I've been in Indiana all my life. And I went part-time. Took me more years than I care to remember to get my bachelor's degree. But while I was working there, I worked in electronic security for financial institutions. And the president of that company and I formed another corporation, and I was designing electronic devices for identifying bank clientele, with the entering pins and things like that. And I was also an adjunct professor at Purdue at the time, and looking to make a change. And I sold my interest in that corporation and went to work for the Northern Indiana Commuter Transportation District back in '91. They had just acquired a few years previously the South Shoreline Railroad, which runs from South Bend to Chicago. We have both passenger and freight. It's an electrified railway. We use an overhead contact system. And all of the old engineering staff had left that railroad. There really wasn't anyone to learn from there. And AREMA became a big resource for me early on, looking through their manuals and learning about what we needed to do in all of the systems I worked on. We had some antiquated OCS and substations, and we had automatic block signaling at the time, still operated by timetable and train order. And everything that was there was, put in probably during the Hoover administration. So you can imagine the condition of those. But I first got involved in the AEI committee because I was looking for ways to identify trains for routing, to automatically route them through gauntlet interlockings for approaching a high level platform. And so I worked with that for a while. And then later on, Ernie Shoup and Melvin Clark approached me about some manual parts they were working on for impedance bonds. And they asked me to join. It was still AAR then, AAR Committee E. So I got involved in E for several years. And then, of course, we became AREMA Committee 37. And I was on committee for several years there, and then worked my way through, subcommittee chair and then committee vice chair. I think I was, Rich Bowman was the chair at the time. And then, or Bowden, excuse me. And then became committee 37 chair and, worked my way up through the ranks on that, came up to, I was a chair from 2006 through 2012. Then I became a CNS director in 12 through 14, then a functional group vice president, 14 through 16. That was the year I fell off the stage at the conference and landed myself in the hospital. So then I moved on to governor in 18, senior vice president in 1920, and then president since last September, and about to become a past president next month at the end of the conference.
So did you say 36?
37.
37, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
and 37 is, and what is that?
Signal systems.
Signal systems. And signal systems obviously will fall under CNS, which is communication and signals. So you were, sounds like you were a member of 37 for quite some time. I actually am not familiar with Committee E.
Well, that was AER Committee E, and then the CNS section left the AAR and became part of AREMA, the CNS functional group. So that dates prior to 1997. I was on Committee E.
Okay.
I think D was perhaps grade crossings, similar pattern and numbers. And it was the same committees, but they were renumbered when we became part of AREMA.
Okay. So then you were on 37, put your time in there, started as a secretary, worked your way up vice chair, chair. Then you joined the CNS group, functional group, as I'm assuming a director, yeah?
Yeah. I started as a director when and then went up to vice president from there of the functional group.
And how does one make that jump?
Well, it's just by nomination.
Okay.
I think I'd been very active in the committee, and I guess the nominating committee recognized that I was committed to the industry and committed to AREMA, and they asked me if I would accept that position. And
Okay, so there's a nominating committee that's keeping an eye on who is really putting in the blood, sweat, and tears. It sounds like, which has allowed you to be recognized for your efforts
yeah,
and be, if you will, promoted. And then I know that in that role, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you oversee or oversaw the basically all the chairmen and chairwomen of the committees, right? I remember at the chairs, there's chairpersons meetings twice a year. There's an individual at the head table driving the conversation around ballot material, et cetera, et cetera. Correct?
right. So the directors work with the functional group VP to collect the data and manage the committees and file the annual reports, etc. for the
Okay.
functional group, and we do meet twice a year, and then we also handle the publications committee, uh, or participate in the publications committee for the CNS functional group. There are similar committees that handle the manual for railway engineering. There's a
And then,
publication committee as well.
and then as a president, it sounds like you get to have your hand in the strategic plan of AREMA's overall strategic plan and the opportunity to put your fingerprints on it because I've been reading all of your message from the president articles that you've been writing for RTNS, which by the way, those are fantastic. It's allowed me to kind of follow you throughout the calendar year. And I mean, forever, you will have your fingerprints on this organization through the creation of Committee 35. Is that correct?
Yeah, Committee 35 is our new information technology group. I think it's a bit overdue, actually, to get into that. The CNS functional group had been handling much of information technology through Committee 39, but more as it applied to positive train control. And there are so many more IT applications on the railway and on the railway wayside that we felt it was time to explore that. On my railroad, of course, we have a lot of IT applications for passenger service. The variable message signs, the ticket vending machines, the communications with Wi-Fi for the passengers on the train. But we're seeing more and more IT getting into the Internet of Things, the wayside diagnostics, and the big data applications. So I, started to brainstorm a little bit about all of the different things that are needed, and talking with Jerry Speck, the functional group vice president for CNS, and working with Beth, and we put together a strawman, and we put together several topics. The committee has now formed. We have committee chairman Mike Weber, and Robert Kramer is the vice chair. Clayton Payne is the secretary, and they have now put together their subcommittees. It looks like they've put together 4, and covering all the various disciplines and the railroad specific IT applications. I spoke to Beth earlier today. We now have 26 committee members on 35, as well as the 3 officers, and I expect that to grow even more. And we have several of the CNS committees are meeting in September at the RSSI conference in Indianapolis. So we'll be actively recruiting more there. And I'm actually going to be there attending to the AREMA booth at the RSSI conference. And
Is that in person?
yes, it is in person.
Okay.
It's in Indianapolis.
And the dates on that one, do you know offhand? If you
Yeah,
don't,
that's the week prior to the conference.
Okay.
So
I believe that's the week. I know that the
it's the Friday and
conference.
Saturday,
Let's see, the conference is the week
or
of
Thursday
the.
and Friday, excuse me.
So would that be the 16, 17, I believe. Does that sound right?
Yeah, if that's the Thursday and Friday, I don't have a calendar in front of me at the moment. So yeah, the Thursday and Friday prior to the AREMA conference, our
Okay.
virtual conference.
Yeah, I had a fascinating discussion with Mike and Jerry about that committee on our last episode, and I can tell you, I mean, just by the sheer number of topics, I mean, I agree with you completely that this is probably should have been created 5 years ago, but it is what it is. It's here today, and I think that the variety of backgrounds that will make up that committee is going to be staggering compared to some of the other niche committees that we have. Steel bridges is going to be people pretty well educated in steel design versus this. You might have applications for bridges and ballast or not ballast, but maintenance of way and like you just said, all the passenger interactions and ticketing machines and electrification. There's just a lot there, and at roughly 30 people so far, I would not doubt that by the end of the year or so, we're going to be over 100 people.
Yeah, it could end up being one of the largest committees at AREMA, and I think it fills a void in the industry. I had spoken with our IT professionals on my railroad and asked them, where do you go for your body of knowledge? And they really didn't have a sound answer to that. They talked to vendors, they talked to other friends in the industry, but they really didn't have a home for that body of knowledge. And this is what we're looking to provide through Committee 35.
Well, I'll be the first person to publicly, in a worldwide global setting, thank you for creating Committee 35 on this podcast. So, with that, I'm going to jump right into something I know you're passionate about, and it's something that got me kind of excited. And frankly, we've talked about having an episode of the podcast in the near future to deal with this topic in depth. But let's talk a little bit about the fact that the Hyperloop administrators, engineers, etc., reached out to AREMA about the guidance in developing recommended practices for the construction of the Hyperloop. And frankly, and you and I joke about this, for those that used to or maybe still go to the bank and go to the drive-through window and the little suction plastic tube machine, I think a lot of people believe that the Hyperloop is a large version of that, and I don't believe that's the case, is it?
No, it isn't. There's typically there may be a vacuum involved, but the purpose of the vacuum is to reduce air resistance on the vehicles. So these vehicles are going to be in a tube or and they're operating in a vacuum, but they're using, at least in some models, they're using maglev technology. And so we're traveling at a very high, actually at aircraft speeds, through a tube that can either be placed on the surface of the earth, or it can be buried, or it could be underwater actually. And there was the first live movement of passengers occurred in Nevada in the U.S. last fall, and I was honored to attend that virtually to see this take place. And it really took me back to my childhood watching the NASA launches. There was a countdown, and then some delays ensued, and then the countdown resumed, and then the vehicle was launched, and it accelerated very smoothly, and I think it only reached around 100 miles per hour. It has the potential to get up in I believe it's the 700 mile per hour range, but their test track wasn't quite that long enough to support that. But it proved the technology. There are many similarities in this technology to what we do on railways. It's a fixed guideway. There's going to be a need for meet and pass locations. I'm sure there will be storage yards for the vehicles. There's going to be stations, platforms. There will be a need for bridges and tunnels, uh, needs for control systems. So I could see why they approached AREMA for this. And also, the United States DOT had decided that the regulations for Hyperloop will be managed through the Federal Railroad Administration. So I think they recognize as well all of the similarities and commonalities with railways. So this is coming. I'm convinced it is. There are efforts worldwide. It started as a competition, probably about 2010, 2011, but we're now seeing it gain momentum worldwide, and I believe it's going to come, and sooner than we think.
Well, I think I'm excited about that in the sense that it does have commonalities in the industry that you and I happen to play in. I'm a little disappointed in that because I always pictured it to be similar to the 1985 game Super Mario Brothers, where we could just jump in one of those green tubes and pop out somewhere where there's a lot of coins I could pick up, I guess. But this might be the next best thing. And and the idea of traveling at aircraft speeds, it sounds to me like you're not going to have a lot of stations in between, you know, endpoints, if you will. So if I'm going to fly from Los Angeles to New York, I'm not going to stop 4 times unless I bought a really cheap ticket. uh, so for this one, where are they looking to start? What kind of distances are we talking about? LA to Vegas, or are there other locations that they're looking at?
Yeah, I think they're looking at LA to San Francisco, and perhaps
Wow.
St. Louis to Kansas City. Some of the common flight corridors, and you're right, there won't be many stations, but it's an on-demand service rather than a scheduled service. So you appear at the station and you wait for the next pod to come along,
Oh,
these pods just hold 20 or so people, and you board and off you go.
okay.
And so it's a fixed guideway. So being that, I would imagine there's going to be need, as I said, for meet and pass planning and that sort of thing, unless there's multiple tubes, just like as we would have on many rail corridors. We'll have multiple tracks, and so we can avoid some of the meet pass planning and make make the hyperloop more efficient that way. The system I've seen, I think I included some photos of the system being built in Nevada. Uh, I don't want to be overly simplistic, but there's just support structures and a length of pipe in between, and I would imagine there are some coils underneath that form part of the maglev system. So
Cool.
I think it's all very realizable.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it sounds like sounds like it's something to get people, of all ages excited again about potential greenfield construction in the sense that when you talk about the high speed rail plan that was I saw rolled out in roughly 2008 ish. Obviously there was a lot of brownfield there, right? Going in and working on existing right of way and structures and whatnot. This one obviously has to be from the ground up construction. So I mean, if you're a young person or someone in school now, even you could make a career out of this if this really does take off. And AREMA's right there to assist and or document some of the best practices.
And, and I would also want to mention it's a very energy efficient form of transportation to the extent where some of the systems, I believe they're looking at one in Dubai that might even be solar powered. Of course, there's plenty of sunlight in Dubai, I would imagine, but very little energy because there's no air resistance, and so I think it could very well be the way of the future. And AREMA should be there. We need to stay in front of the technologies, and I can see the Hyperloop folks learning a lot from us, and vice versa.
Cool. And I look forward to, I know we're talking about the potential podcast, talking directly to some of the employees of I believe the Virgin Hyperloop, and we're working on that. So stay tuned for that episode in the near future. But enough about the Hyperloop. Let's talk a little bit about the big virtual conference that's coming up. And you are presiding over it. And I'm really sorry that, similar to Ed Sparks, you will not have the ability to do this in person. I know you're recording a lot of it. I know I was a part of a recording last week for one of the sessions, and I've been seeing a lot of the technical presentations are being recorded and submitted to headquarters. So I guess let's start with the Vic Babin. If you were talking to somebody right now that's thinking about going to the virtual conference, why should they go?
Yeah, we have the general session on Monday, the opening general session. And for keynote speakers, we're having a panel of industry experts from for commuter and passenger operations, Amtrak, MTA, and my railroad, Northern Indiana Commuter District, South Shoreline, and from LA Metro.
Yep.
So we'll have panelists speaking there.
And I know that I was a part of that, and they're going to be talking a lot about the future of that. That was actually pretty fun. We recorded that about a week ago, and I can tell you, I think everybody should tune into that one. They talk a lot about the impacts of COVID and how that potentially has forever changed how we maintain railway cars from a cleanliness perspective. And we talk a lot about how they took advantage of maintenance of way, work windows, and then there's some pretty interesting things that kind of surprised me in the works in Los Angeles as it relates to the Olympics that are coming our way. So that was a lot of fun putting that together.
We will also have the Hay Award presentation, and we have activities for our student chapters, and we have entertainment again this year by the NS Lawmen. And Tony Hatch will speak, as he usually does during the closing session. That's always very exciting to hear Tony speak. He has an awful lot of knowledge and background of the industry trends and the markets and where we're going in the railway industry.
Yep. And are we going to have is there a virtual booth again where they have the different suppliers? I know they had that last year.
We will not have that this year.
Okay. Yeah, that was.
We do have many sponsors, though, and
sure.
Opportunities to see some of their products.
I think of all the virtual stuff that we have seen since the shutdown, that was probably the biggest stretch. It's tough to recreate walking through a massive conference hall and talking directly to vendors who have maintenance of way equipment on display and different widgets and whatnot. That's just hard to reproduce. So I'm excited to get back to the in-person version of that. So the conference is coming up soon. But more so, I was reading through your most recent message from the president, and I guess I might have missed the memo, but you're not only done with being the president of AREMA, you're officially retiring from the railroad.
I did. I retired in June, actually. And,
okay.
Doing a little bit of work, a little bit of consulting, not too much, a couple days a month. Got several other things going on in my personal life so I haven't really felt quite retired just yet.
Yeah. Well, I as a railroader that's been, like you said, I'll be ready if your phone goes off at 2 a.m. I think you've lived the life of being on 24/7. So it's probably not an easy flip of a switch. And, we mentioned even in that, I'd like to get your take on this. We mentioned in the panel discussion about the silver tsunami, if you will, of retirements of people like yourself. And you even mentioned that when you came to the railroad in 91, that you didn't have a lot of people to apprenticeship from, and you had to go to AREMA. And so I guess in the spirit of that, and as the outgoing AREMA president, um, what are you going to tell a guy that is thinking about making that transition? Or let's talk to the Vic Babin of 1991. Why would you encourage him to join AREMA?
Well, AREMA would be the place to go to round out your career. It really provides a community for an engineer where you can grow professionally and thrive by learning and networking and contributing to the railroad engineering profession and the body of knowledge. There's so much that's learned in both the committee just from talking about the recommended practices that we create and learning from your colleagues what they do on their properties and develop, and it compels you to do a little bit of research for development on the parts that in it you may be working on as an assignment from the committee. And I wouldn't overlook the networking opportunities, and don't miss the opportunity to have dinner with your colleagues there. There's a lot learned over a meal and over a cold beer or just meeting in the lobby. It really fills out that need for a professional, rounds out the career.
I could not agree with that more. If you viewed kind of your career, your overall career as bricks, it's kind of the mortar, right? To kind of hold it together and round it out and provide that. I don't know. You're not going to do anything really well when you do it in a vacuum. I don't think so. I think that you got to get out and talk to people. And as we've been doing these podcasts, everyone has been coming up with that same thing. It's cool to hear that a lot of the people that I speak with they keep coming back to the fact that going to these committee meetings are great and they learn a lot, but so many people have made basically lifelong friendships by doing what you just said, by grabbing a cold beverage after the committee meeting or dinner, or going to a happy hour at the national conference. Or it doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be, a party of 20 either. It can be just you and another person you connect with. And they just happen to oversee a railroad in California, and you happen to oversee something in Georgia. So I couldn't agree with you more about that. And I hope that we continue to see membership increase. It's been a tough year though, Vic, with COVID. How do you foresee things playing out in the future? I think that's kind of how I'd like to close this out is, what do you think the future of passenger rail looks like in this country? And I don't mean to get overly philosophical, but when do you think the railroads are what role are they gonna play as we move forward into the future, whether that's Hyperloop or not?
Well, I still think it's a growth industry where things have changed a little bit. More people working at home, but there's still that need to meet in person. People still will ride the trains. We still need that transportation for energy efficiency. People will use it for cultural events. Of course, the freight industry we continues to grow, and it changes, of course, but I still see a lot of promise in the industry. I do see other things coming along, such as the Hyperloop, but there will always be a need to move people and goods. And I think the future is still promising.
I agree with you 100%. I think that I keep going back to that panel, but you're echoing, the leadership of that panel. Not a single one of them seemed down and out about the future. Every one of them, every leader was excited about what the future held. They were excited about capital projects that are on the way. They were excited about the fact that it is you just said it. You said efficient. It's a very green solution to moving not just heavy loads, but people. So yeah, I don't think this industry is anywhere near the end right now. And so I just want to tell you, Vic, thank you on behalf of everybody at AREMA, everybody that's ever held a membership card. They have no idea. Not everyone has any idea how much effort you've put into this and how much effort it takes just to the years of toiling that you have spent on committees, from subcommittees to probably arguing about shall versus should, all the way up to where you are now, which is overseeing one of the largest conferences in North America. So I guess it's a bittersweet goodbye to you in the sense that you are departing and you are retiring. But thank you for leaving your fingerprints on this industry, Vic.
Well, I'll be around. I always look forward to seeing my friends at conferences and meetings. It's like going home. And some of my best friendships are through AREMA.
Well, if I'm lucky enough, I'm on that list somewhere. But you don't have to say that now.
Well, I know I will see you in Denver next year, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I wanted to I wanted to thank the organization for coming and setting up camp in my town just because I'm here, right? Isn't that what happened?
That's right. The 2022 annual conference, Denver, Colorado.
Perfect. Well, I know my wife's happy about that because that means she's got tabs on me during the hospitality suites, if you will.
Yeah, and that way you can get home and check on the kids once in a while, right?
That's exactly right. All right, Vic. Well, thank you for coming on to the show. You did a great job, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to the audience. So with that, I will we'll see you personally in Denver.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Walter.
Thank you for rolling with AREMA on today's episode of Platform Chats. For further information about AREMA, please visit arema.org or contact us at info@arema.org.